righty. Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa Silva, and I'm with AJU Open. Welcome to another one of our webinars. Whether you've been here a million times or if this is your first time, we welcome you to AJU Open, and we are so happy that you are here. Today, we have a very special guest with us today, a very special speaker, who in fact is the winner of AJU's 2024 Bruce Geller Memorial Prize, Jake Marmer. So we're very excited to have him and to hear some of his poems and prose and what he might argue with us are not memoirs, but we will see in the end. A little bit more about Jake before we get started. Jake Marmer is a poet and a performer and an educator, and he is also the author of 3 poetry collections and 2 Klez jazz poetry recordings. Some of those include Jazz Talmud and Hermeneutic Stomp, just to name a couple of those. He is originally from and was born in the provincial steppes of Ukraine and now resides in Northampton, Massachusetts, and is the head of school at Lander Grinspoon Academy. A little more about the prize that he won, the Bruce Geller Memorial Prize. This is something that we do every year, and we choose between 1 and 3 winners, and they receive a prize of $7,000, which is very auspicious. And we do thank both Bruce and Jeannette Geller, who were Los Angeles residents with a passion for creativity and the pursuit of art defined their lives. That is who that prize is named after, and we thank them for giving us the opportunity to give folks like Jake something to thank them for their fantastic poems and writing. So thank you so much to Bruce and Jeannette. Moving forward, Jake, the folks want to know, who are you? Tell us a little bit more about you. Share a little bit about perhaps your Jewish background. I know that in your previous book, The Neighbor Out of Sound, you talk about it a little bit about, the start of your Jewish journey, and how that has led to you where you are today. So would love to kind of open up with that.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Just first of all, want to say a huge thank you, Alyssa, to you and Natalie behind the scenes, and everyone at AJU who was involved with this prize. Obviously, the Geller family and Jeffrey Herbst, the president, who wrote some wonderful words in the press release. Everybody wrote such wonderful words in the press release about this award. I just want to print it out and put it in my mezuzah. It's just perfect and wonderful. I think you summed it up there in my bio in a lovely way, and especially thrilling to have gotten this prize. This nonfiction prize, because I don't really write nonfiction at all. As you said, I think of myself as a poet. Just in the past few years, I've been wanting to tell stories, write stories about my past, my journey, as you say, the Jewish journey and just human journey, immigrant journey. And I've been writing these pieces that are not quite poems. They don't have line breaks, at the very least. Not that a poem must have a line break, but they don't look like poems, that's for sure. And they're not prose. So I've thought of calling it memoir, but I called it anti-memoir because memoir as a genre doesn't seem to, really capture human experience. Like you think about all the stories happen to you, certainly. Um, all the memories as they overlay each other as I'm sitting here in front of you, like having heard your bio summarizing my life, I'm also thinking about this is a wonderful award that you've given me. I'm also, because you're in Los Angeles, I'm thinking about that and being in Los Angeles, and my daughter's over here, hanging out and reading, and I'm thinking about her and her childhood, and makes me think of my child. And like, this is how human brain works, right? Like we're like these layers of stories and memories and tales that interweave. And really this question of how do you tell all these stories? How do you represent that sense of a whole self? That's really the question that I've been obsessed with. And like you say, like folks want to know who you are. Like, I don't know. That's the issue. And I think like that's the quintessential thing about being human. Like you don't know. So if you don't know, like what do you do with writing? Like how can you try to write down and present yourself as some kind of like stable human being, like a lamppost is
Well,
stable. You
stability
know
is
what I mean?
boring, so we don't want
Yeah.
that.
Well, yes, a little bit, and all at the same time, like there has to be a form, there has to be a format, and the form that some of the pieces had taken, specifically the pieces that won this award, um, I'm calling the style skaz, and skaz is like this Slavic word that um, it describes a kind of writing that invokes an oral storyteller. It's almost like you can feel like somebody talking to you from the page. And a lot of great classics of Yiddish literature were written like in a way like Tevye, the Dairyman, is like written in that way. Tevye is like speaking to you. And now, dear reader, like that's called skaz. That's the Slavic word for it. I added an extra Z, just makes sense. Um, so a few of the pieces I'll read there in that general style.
That's fantastic. And so wait, so Discuss, is that like the original like breaking of the fourth wall kind of situation in writing? Is that where it comes from?
Um, I wouldn't say it's I mean, yeah, it's connected to it. It's connected to it. It's sort of like that ambiguity that you get with breaking of the fourth wall, where like,
Yeah.
oh, are we inside a fictional narrative or are we not? Are we here or are we there? It's more like um It's more like literature is like these walls of,
Yeah.
like you think of a person sitting and reading at home, right? Like reading is a very solitary experience. Like you sit on the couch with your book and you're like in your little universe, right? You and your book.
Yeah.
It didn't used to be like that. Back in the day, people would come together and tell stories and like have the
Mm,
whole interactive experience, right? But
sure.
literature like puts a lot of walls around. So this is an attempt of literature to remove the fourth wall, but also the third and the second and the first, and like just like remove the walls and
Yeah.
go like directly to a person, like in all of their weirdness and complexity and
Yeah.
just soulfulness. Yeah,
Oh, that's beautiful. I really love that. And before we kind of let you go and read to us some of your fantastic works, I have one more question for you.
sure.
And I know I was reading, I think it was an interview between you and I want to say it was on the tablet maybe in 2018, and they had asked if you would ever write a memoir. Right. And you were like, I don't really know, like it's not really my style, etc. Okay, now we're here 6 years later. And while maybe you still won't categorize it as a memoir, it is memoir-esque. How did you get here? I mean, what changed in the last few years for you to start thinking about this form of writing?
No idea what that you know what that interview is. I have no idea who that person is who was answering the questions. You know, um, yeah. Hmm. I don't know. I think like one reaches a certain point in life when a certain degree of like bewilderment over oddness of life, it just builds up to the point where like you have a number of stories and you want to tell. Maybe that's part of it. Another part of it is, as my kids were growing up, they would ask me for stories and I would, sit with them in the evening by their bed and just like stories that would come to mind or were like childhood stories, stories about my grandparents. I was very, very close with my grandparents and their stories would come to me and I would just like remember. And it was a very moving experience, like really um, like wanting to wanting them, my wanting my kids to know me and
Mm,
the his stories of my family, like that was a really big part of it. And the final piece, like in the final years, in these last years, there's the war. That's the really big thing that's going on in Ukraine right now. And um, when you look at the news, you get like a very, very specific view of this like battered, beaten down, attacked, defiant country that's
mm,
standing and pushing against this violent aggression. And but it's also that country is like so much more than that, like
right.
it, it's all kinds of other things, also like things that grow there, people who live there, this huge Jewish history, right? Like Jews,
Massive. Yeah.
yeah, lived there for something like 1,000 years.
Yep.
Um, fundamental. And um, so wanting to tell those stories, to preserve those stories, to preserve that other Ukraine that has nothing to do with the war.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing. It's amazing what a tragedy and war will do to our psyche and our goals in life. And as well as you touched on
Yes.
having kids, right? Wanting to make sure that those stories and your narratives of either who you once were, who you wish to be, who you are now are perhaps written down for posterity for them. So that's fantastic. Well, I want to take any of your time because I want
Mm,
the folks on to hear some of your amazing works.
thank you.
And just a reminder to folks that we're going to be starting a Q&A, roughly 10 to 15 minutes at the end of this session. So be sure to put your questions for Jake in the chat function. I'm sorry, in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen.
Hmm.
But with that, Jake, please take us away.
Thank you. And if people have questions, you can just post them. And if you want to switch up if there's somebody has like a burning question, just like put like a fire icon, like burning to ask a question, and maybe we'll ask Alyssa to read them out. But let's start. I'll start um, with a few poems, not the Ska's memoir pieces, but the poems as an appetizer. Um, this is called Pears. I follow everyone around the house turning off lights. I turn off, but I do not extinguish. The ritual of a dad joke barely covers the superstitious tremble. A mitzvah invites a mitzvah. Transgression follows a transgression. Didn't need the Talmud to tell me that, but it does anyway. All the lights are off, and I stand purposeless in the middle of the room looking at my grandparents across 3 decades and an ocean, wrapping each rock hard green September pear into its own page of Pravda or Izvestia. It had to be one of those two newspapers. There were no others. Висит груша, нельзя скушать. A pear is hanging, but you can't eat it. That's a kid's riddle. A pear is hanging, but you can't eat it. One of the first we all learned. Hint, it is shaped and sized like a pear, but it isn't. What happens to an unripe word stuck inside of a person, stuck standing in the middle of an image, a dark room on another continent? Time and wars happen to it and keep happening, both inside and outside of my light bulb's reach. Once, maybe 15 years ago, we just got married and went to Odessa to find my wife's old relative. A woman opened the door, her mother stalking behind her, chanting, "Turn on the lights, lights, turn them on, turn on the lights, turn on the lights, turn on the lights," in an accent rich like moonshine, with Ukrainian and Russian and Yiddish flavors. It was explained to us as a little girl right before the war ended in 1945. She went blind. Um, this one is called Holy of Holies. When I think about holiness, It's not commandments or sacrifices, not even kindness that comes to mind. I think about the last time I crossed the ocean to see my grandmother, and we both knew as she walked to see me out of the gate, and I climbed into the car, we knew it as we knew each other in the thickness of love, love that should have its own word for it. Years slept in the same room, years of opening as poems and stories, and there outside of the gate, the truth of self-mutilation that immigration is. Truth of the last words. Truth shared the way holy burnt sacrifices are shared by God's pained imagination demands to confine the sense of terrible holiness, terrible, terrible holiness, terrible, beautiful holiness that descends as it did. And as I sat in the back of the car with my son, just a baby then, crying in his car seat. Maybe he was hungry or lonely or just didn't feel like being confined by belts and straps. Um, Maybe I'll read one more poem. And this is a more recent poem. Um, this one appeared in a magazine called The Rattle. Like a great online magazine. They have a section called Poets Respond, and it's kind of just like responses for to things that happen like immediately. And this was from early days of the war. Um, yep. Um, the ant has feet. The ant has feet, and it keeps walking away from us, says Lev, my son, as we trudge through the side trail that never seems to merge back to the main road. The ant, why does it just disappear? Asks Aura as we finally climb out of a shrub, shake out dirt from our shoes, and take in the sight. Los Angeles, peopled vastness fused into shoreline, fades into fog or horizon, or simply the end of the visible. I take the picture of the two of them smiling, thumbs up, sweaty faces, still so young, and send it halfway across the planet to my parents, who don't speak the same language as my children, but read their smiles as a kind of insurance. The world still exists. It's nighttime where they are. They respond immediately, awake to their own horizon, blurring at the edges of the TV, city after city covered by rocket fire. Yes, photos, anything to ask them without asking. If I refresh my screen enough times, can I be assured that when I put down my phone, their town will remain untouched in this valley of death? Thousands of miles, my short circuiting universe, all of it here. It's a loop. The trail, I mean, our own feet marking the end where beginning once was. Thank you. Um, I'll read you a little bit of Skaz. Maybe this is from the introduction. It's kind of like meta. It is about Skaz, and it is Skaz about. Yeah. Um, the word Skaz means a story, but not just any story. It's a word that faded out of casual Ukrainian and Russian use a long time ago, so it's got an aura of an old story. And you tell it in that old world kind of a way, which is to say, as you talk, you must gesticulate as if trying to hold on to shreds of history flying around you. You could maybe use Skaz to talk about your real or imaginary ancestors, but not to dish any old gossip you heard standing in line for a cup of kvass. But hold on to your kvass if you have it, and your gossip, for you will need them in just a moment. Skaz is second cousins with the word skazitsa, to go crazy, to spaz out, and skazhenny, a madman, two more old world words with a flavor of fear and even reverence around them, a reverence that probably has to do with the mad and naked origins of any story that's worth its salt, afflicted with some impossible, irreconcilable past that lives right inside your own mouth. And such are the stories, more touched than touching, that I want to tell you. Boris Eichenbaum, a great reader of Soviet literature with roots not unlike my own, gave the word skaz a new life, linking it to peculiar kind of writing where a story is carried forward not by plot, but by larger than life persona of a garrulous storyteller, alive on the page, staring you right in the eyes and talking to you, reader, listener, and webcast page, as if to a friend, an old friend, like a conversation about mythic ancestors, about who are you and why don't you know who you are? As if it's happening right in line for kvass, except at the end, instead of kvass, the drink, you get pungent, fermented, poetic distillation that is written down but feels as if dramatically whispered or shouted in your ear, like they say in graduate school. It's a hybrid genre. Stop with the introduction there. So get a little bit of flavor of what it is. So I'll read one of the pieces that won this award, and again, I'm so honored to be recognized in this way by AJU, and so grateful for it. So this is one of the pieces. It's called Wide Open Mouth, and it was published in Laurel Review. Great magazine, fall 2023. Their issue is all about Jewish lit, like contemporary Jewish lit. It's really awesome. Okay, Wide Open Mouth. There's a Hasidic tradition to drink liquor after the fish course on Shabbos to celebrate Prophet Jonah, who was held captive in the belly of the fish, but prayed and was released. However, the Talmud says you can't pray when you're drunk, which is to say, as with the poem, here too, you never quite know who is swallowing whom and who is the one doing the praying, you know? My grandfather was born in Belarus, but moved to Ukraine with a few bullet holes in his limbs. After, as a 16-year-old in 1945, he marched through half of Europe along with the rest of the Red Army. He smoked a lot when he drank, and also as he walked, and as he sat, and as he laid in bed with a big transistor radio across his chest. My grandmother hated his smoking and made her feelings known. But Clara, he would say in the most gallant, embracing voice, you used to enjoy the smell of good cigars when you were young, implying loss of sophistication, of a refined and risque taste, which my grandmother once had, and now could regain again, if only she let him smoke in peace. But the truth is that what he smoked was not fine cigars, but papyrosi, old Soviet filterless, coarse twists of horseshit. They smell like it too. A cigarette is a paragon of health and value compared to papyrosa. Each box had a little picture of smoky mountains on the box, the Urals or Caucasus, or maybe in our Ukrainian steppes. They felt dreamy to my grandfather, beautiful, like those fancy cigars he once smoked in my grandmother's presence. His ashtray was made of thin but sturdy china and was made to look like a fish with bulging eyes and a large cave of a mouth. Time did not fade the colors one bit. The blue, the gold, the milky white. Maybe they're brightened in my memory. The fish followed my grandfather like a dog from desk to windowsill to kitchen table, occasionally would end up under a tree in the yard to air out. Once my grandfather left a not quite extinguished papirosa inside it. Walking through the house, I, probably 6 years old, spotted it and without thinking grabbed it and inhaled. My head filled with manure, and I felt as if I was suddenly inside the fish, saw myself as if lodged deep in its gut, sky looming above its yawning lips, like Denise Levertov had it. As the poet stands open-mouthed in the temple of life, contemplating his experience, there come to him the first words of the poem. See, the fish was the poet, and I became its fuming words. The poem was a spell, and I was the nauseous vertigo. That must be what it feels like to be language, no? My grandfather started drinking and smoking, as I said, like a 16-year-old in the Red Army's trenches during World War II. His mother died in the evacuation in a town whose name none of us know, and he threw himself into the army, which was impoverished, short on food and clothing. In the trenches, soldiers were handed booze and smoke to get them through. He continued onward for the next 60 years, punctuating life with his ubiquitous shot glass and a papirosa, as one might with a blessing. My grandfather always kept a few canaries around. Once they laid eggs, and wanting to see, I opened the cage and accidentally not fazed. He only asked for the pleasure of my company to see a man known to me as the professor, from whom a new bird was to be procured. The professor, who had a distinguished, bulging red nose of a drunk, was dressed in old soiled clothes, lived on the outskirts of our town, surrounded by innumerable cages of birds. It was there that I, for the first time, looked inside a dovecot at a crew of homing pigeons, and was told all about doves that never leave, that find their way home no matter where they are released. Are they nostalgic? Do they feel guilty? Do they feel oddly tethered, as if they could not possibly belong anywhere but on their little perch, laden with palimpsest of ancestral dreck? Is that all that there is to the great mystery of magnetoreception? Great birds, pigeons, said the professor, if only they didn't look so graceless when they fly. There's something about their flapping that really annoyed him. I don't know. Do you know that Jonah's name in Hebrew means dove? And that whoever composed the tale of praying in fish's belly was riffing on another story of another mythic apocalypse circling voyage, that of Noah and his dove? Jonah was a home-in pigeon who could not avoid returning to his roost, his fate and his call. Of course, Noah's dove was circling around the new, slowly drying world, and Jonah was underwater, stuffed inside the fish, facing a city of people he felt disdain towards, a city perhaps not unlike Kirovograd, where I grew up, not unlike Krapivnitsky, as it is now called. And I'm not saying Jonah the homing pigeon was fated to dream himself back to Kirovograd, Krapivnitsky at some point or another, however much he wanted to stop thinking about it. It's just that when you live inside a text, you're bound to wake up and find yourself among its dark, fish smelling innards. And if you start praying, the fish might spit you out back to where you came from, even if the city of origin changed its name and you did too, Jonah. But what happens if the fish decides to keep you? And stuck inside, you don't come back, not even for your grandfather's funeral, for none of your four grandparents' funerals, to mourn not from across the ocean, but from within the ocean, is so dark, so impossibly dark, for nothing can ensconce one as completely as guilt. Why didn't I come back? Money, work, visas, family. There are many reasons, and every time I think of them, I am submerged deeper. And now, as I write this, now as I'm speaking these words to you across this webcast, rockets are flying above Kropivnitsky, the airports are closed, and the way back is disappearing like Jonah's writing across the water. Reader, listener, Together, we are inside this fish, maneuvered by the same tail or tail. There is no prophecy, and my grandfather's open-mouthed ashtray is gone too. Though some years ago I went back and searched for it. My whole family did. Um, that's that piece. Um, okay, trying to think.
That was beautiful. I just wanted
Thank
to
you.
really quickly just say, and there's such a difference in that one than even from the poems that you read before. And just the way that you read it as well. Like you can really tell that it's your history, it's your family. It's coming from like the very depths of your core and of your soul. So really
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you so much for your kind words. Should I read a little more and then
Please
see
do.
what?
Yeah. I would say maybe one more. And then once again, just another reminder to folks to please put any questions that you have for Jake in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And we'll start those after this final reading.
Okay, sure. You know what? I'll read like a shortish piece. It's also in the beginning of this manuscript, Ska's manuscript, and it is called Borscht. There's an old story I heard as a child, and I don't mind if I tell it. A man returns to Odessa after many years of being away. He bursts into his childhood friend's home, finds the friend alone in the dark, silent, eating. Misha, he yells, my dearest, where's everyone? Where are your mama and your papa? Dead, Misha says blankly. Oh, Misha, and your sisters, where are they? Dead. Oh, but our neighbor and friend, little boy, he still lives here, right? Dead, says Misha, at which point our guest, a reasonable person, exactly as reasonable as us, sitting here, exclaims, was it the war? The plague? Pogrom? I'm eating borscht. What? When I eat borscht, everyone might as well be dead. Jokes like this one would always be set in Odessa because in that city, humor was inseparable from survival. Odessa's language was a fusion of Jewish and Slavic languages, Bessarabian, French, criminal slang from the port, the clamor of the shtetl, to Isaac Babel, a writer of whom I'll speak more soon, as long as I don't get sidetracked. That was a quintessence of poetry. And when dark humor and poetry dissolve into each other, as they do in this old joke, your deep red borscht can taste like a vision. No borscht, no prophecy, no Odessa, no jokes, no Marley, no Fugees. Not only is the author dead, but so is the so-called narrator. Got lost forever in the unreliable threads of Odessa's mysterious dialect. The protagonist is long gone too, interred in the plot, and even foil is now just regular household aluminum foil. History itself is but a snakeskin on a bare ass rock staring at the Black Sea. So, is there anyone left out there? Anyone? Anyone? Reader? Listener? Are you ready for some of this borscht?
I'm ready for some borscht, please. Someone tell me where in LA I can find good borscht, please. Amazing.
It is
Thank you.
lunchtime and on the West Coast. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Alrighty, let's see. Let's take a look at our questions. First of all, a lot of comments, a lot of comments for you, compliments. That was so beautiful, so vivid, fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Um, so one of the questions that we have here is actually referring back to, I believe, my first question to you about your Jewish journey. And that you didn't really actually talk about your Jewish journey. The folks on this webinar are fast, they're quick, so you can't get around
Mm,
them. So you didn't actually answer the question. right? So talk to us about your Jewish journey. And I know folks may not know so much of the background, but in doing my research, I did read that you didn't know that you were Jewish until you were 8 years old. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's correct.
Okay.
It's quite the revelation. I think I sensed that something was up, but
Mhm.
like post World War II and the Holocaust, Eastern European Jewish family, that
Yep.
was kind of the vibe. In later years, I found out like there were many people who had the same story like me. But yeah, I found out I was like 8, 9 years old. And that's a whole separate story. But once I became attuned to it, I kind of became obsessed. I wanted to know more. I was hungry for it. I think I also had like a really deep spiritual hunger. And there wasn't really like spiritual, like a conversation about spirituality. There wasn't really an outlet for it or anything like that. I started reading, um, I was reading a lot, and that was a way to get somewhere, something. I begged my mom to buy me a dictionary, like a Yiddish to Russian, Russian to Yiddish dictionary.
Ah,
And I just started learning more. Like I didn't get very much past like Aleph. I don't think I even got through Aleph, but
mhm.
like that's not
The
how a
thought that
person
counts.
learns the
Thought that
language.
counts.
Yeah, exactly. But I was very hungry for it, and a lot of my childhood was defined by that hunger. Eventually, there was a Sunday school. Soviet Union collapsed, and things started to change. But I'm ahead of a Jewish day school now, and part of the reason was this sense, like some kind of cosmic tikkun needs to happen. Like how could it be that that there was like I was growing up with no access to it, and just um Jewish education and Jewish learning like is really really central to my life. When I came to the States as a teenager, I came on my own. I was 15, and I yeah I mean I was immediately hooked and submerged. I went to Yeshiva University as an undergrad. And that was many years ago. And there's so many stops on a journey. Like I was saying about a memoir, you can't quite, it's not a bus route. You can't quite summarize it, but these
Yes.
are a couple of things, and reading a lot and being profoundly involved in the world of Jewish art. Really, that's um, has been really important to me, and I really think there's like truly a renaissance of Jewish art, Jewish music, Jewish
Yeah.
literature that's happening. And being part of it has been really exciting, and also um, kind of maintaining a connection to Jewish artistic traditions of the past, like ancient traditions, but also literary traditions from a century ago, music traditions. They are all out there, and they're extremely rich and nourishing.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for answering that.
All right,
We have another question here,
sure.
a comment, then a question. Jake, thank you so much for the incredible poems and the phenomenal reading from Skaz. I was especially intrigued by hearing them together and enjoyed thinking about the transitions between your lyric mode and your dramatic narrative mode. I'd like to ask you about the role of the body in your work. There's a noticeable gestural and bodily element in your poetry, and after hearing Skaz, I felt that your performative approach to it incorporates the body as well. Could you talk a bit about this? Specifically, how does the body play a role in your crafting of Ska's voice?
What an excellent question.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like somebody I should be friends with. I don't know who asked it, but um, yeah, if we're not friends already, like totally. Yeah, thank you for noticing all these pieces. I mean, yeah, I think really that's really where it's at. My dream with writing poems, writing anything is lifting, lifting off of the page and into a real human presence. And to me, performance is a big part of it. And um, I think what makes um, writing particularly exciting, whether it's poems or these prose pieces, is the possibility that the text is unfinished.
Hmm.
And depending on what's happening in the moment, it can morph. And if you think about like old school storytellers, like, it's like playing in a coffee shop or like old school
Yeah.
tavern, whatever, and just like telling epic stories. They may be winding down, and all of a sudden, like this big party walks in, and like, I'm not closing the shop. I'm just like, by the way, I forgot to tell you this important part of the story, and just like weave back around. Do you know what I mean? So like, there's a certain life to this, like the story is alive in you. Um, and I think body is part of it, like the gestures, right? Because language is not enough, right? That's so um, frustrating. And yet that's all we have, right? To describe our experience, but it's not enough. So we use hands to like get at, and especially I think let's say like immigrant people, immigrant cultures where you are like between languages and you're trying to like grab the space between languages to like reach across and try to say the thing that you need to say. Like you need the body to reach over there. And then when you're composing, I think one needs to compose with one's whole body. Like it has to be part of it. And I really fell in love with Ska's writing. You know, partly for that very reason. Like you read and almost you can feel these narrators like scratching their hand, being like, "Wait, what was I saying again? Oh no, that's not what it is." Like, and let me, and then just like changing course and like, um, that has so much life in it. Yeah,
Awesome. Thank you. And I'll be sure to get that individual's email over to you if they're okay. If you're okay, the person who answered, or sorry, who asked that question, if you are okay with us sharing your email with Jake, let us know in the Q&A, okay? Awesome. All right, the last question, unfortunately, our time is almost up
of
here,
course,
but our last question for you from an anonymous attendee is,
sure.
do you share your writings with the students at Lander Grinspoon Academy? And if so, how has it impacted them?
I have not shared my writing with students with Lander Greenspoon Academy. They're young. I mean, my daughter is a student at Lander Greenspoon Academy. I see her lurking over there. I think she might have been listening. Well, my kids have been to my readings, so they know about my writing. The students, not so much, and not that it's not appropriate. This is like there are pieces that could be, but um, I have to think about like what that might look like. When I taught older students, adults, and also high school students, it seemed like a more kind of easy, intuitive connection. But with younger students, it has to be different.
Sure.
It has to be different, and something that I am definitely thinking about. That's a really good question.
Awesome.
Really
Well,
sweet question.
yeah, I mean, I feel like your students, regardless of how old they are, would definitely benefit from your narratives and your poetry. It's inspiring.
Oh, thank you.
And I just want to give you kind of one last moment to share anything with the audience before we log off here. We just have 1 or 2 minutes left, so please share any final remarks, and then we'll log off for the day.
I just feel really grateful to everybody who logged in and hopefully had fun. And Alyssa, thank you to you. And once again, thank you to AJU. To Natalie, thank you to the judges of this contest. I think you made a terrible mistake by picking me, but I'm still grateful to you. And thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jake. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you next time at AJU Open. Bye.